What happens when the line between innovation and recklessness disappears? When personal ambition overtakes scientific caution, the story of modern biohacking reveals a dangerous intersection where cutting-edge technology meets the human desire to transcend biology. What started as a movement to democratize science has spiraled into a landscape of extreme self-experimentation, unproven treatments, and one tragedy that shocked even the most fearless biohackers. The rise of DI biology, biohacking represents humanity's boldest attempt to rewrite its own biological rules. Born from frustration with pharmaceutical regulation and astronomical drug prices, the movement attracted scientists, entrepreneurs, and dreamers who believed they could do in garages what traditional institutions refused to do in laboratories. These individuals operated on a simple principle: why wait for FDA approval when you can experiment on yourself right now? The appeal was undeniable, for patients suffering from incurable diseases and those trapped by financial barriers. Biohacking offered hope where the establishment offered nothing but delays. The community grew organically through conferences, online forums, and social media platforms. Biohackers shared their successes and celebrated their breakthroughs with the enthusiasm of pioneers. Some conducted microbiome experiments by transplanting donor material to reshape their gut bacteria. Others attempted to edit their own DNA using CRISPR, a gene editing technology that promised to cure genetic diseases. A few even tried to engineer their bodies for lactose tolerance, treating their own physiology as a laboratory experiment. The tone of the movement was bold, optimistic, and increasingly theatrical. Success stories dominated the narrative. The dangers remained hidden in the shadows. Josiah Zayner became the public face of this movement, a trained biochemist with a PhD. Zayner performed dramatic self-experiments on stages and live streams, injecting himself with experimental compounds and attempting genetic modifications. His work attracted media attention and inspired countless others to follow his example. But Zayner never anticipated what his activism would unleash. As the movement grew, he watched others push boundaries far beyond what scientific caution could justify. The person who would cross those boundaries more dramatically than anyone else was a charismatic entrepreneur named Aaron Trawick. When ambition became delusion, Aaron Trawick never received formal scientific training. He had no medical background, no laboratory experience, and no PhD to his name. What he possessed instead was absolute conviction and theatrical flair. As the CEO of Ascendance Biomedical, Trawick positioned himself as a revolutionary who would liberate life, saving treatments from the clutches of government regulation and pharmaceutical corporations. His company claimed to be developing cures for herpes, HIV, cancer, and aging itself, but developing treatments inside a legitimate laboratory was not Trawick's style. He preferred the spotlight. In October 2017, Ascendance Biomedical staged its first major publicity stunt. A computer programmer named Tristan Roberts, who carried HIV, agreed to inject himself with an experimental gene therapy designed by the company. The injection was live-streamed on Facebook, injecting compounds that had never been tested in human beings. The company claimed this treatment would reduce his viral load. Within weeks, his viral load actually increased. The experiment failed, but Trawick was already planning his next stunt. On February 4, 2018, at a biohacking conference in Austin, Texas, Trawick took the stage and began removing his clothing. When his thigh was exposed, he raised a syringe filled with an experimental herpes treatment. The treatment was based on a virus that had been tested only in mice. Trawick was about to become the first human ever to receive it. As a Facebook live stream broadcast to thousands, he injected the compound into his muscle. He claimed the treatment had undergone insane levels of testing. He claimed this represented the future of transparent, democratic science. Even his fellow biohackers were horrified, immediately denounced Trawick on social media. Zayner called the stunt reckless and warned that Ascendance was gravely misleading people. He predicted that Trawick's actions would make the entire biohacking community look like irresponsible scammers. But Trawick dismissed the criticism. He spoke confidently about expanding his treatments to cancer patients. He sued news outlets that questioned his methods. He locked himself in his company's laboratory and barricaded his colleagues inside with him during a confrontation. His behavior became increasingly erratic and hostile. The lessons from a tragedy, Trawick's story did not have the ending of a visionary pioneer. He was found dead in a sensory deprivation flotation tank in Washington, D.C. He was 28 years old. His body was discovered after spending too much time in the tank, and investigators found drug paraphernalia among his belongings. The autopsy concluded he died from drowning, with ketamine present in his system. The biohacking community struggled to process this tragedy. Some colleagues mourned the loss of a man driven by genuine idealism, a person who genuinely wanted to help suffering patients escape the constraints of pharmaceutical capitalism. Others viewed his death as an inevitable consequence of reckless experimentation and psychological instability. Both perspectives contained truth. The real problem with biohacking extends far beyond individual personalities. When a researcher works in a legitimate laboratory, they operate under institutional review boards that scrutinize experimental protocols. Multiple scientists review the work. Safety standards and manufacturing procedures must be documented and verified. Adverse effects must be reported. Human subjects receive informed consent based on evidence from animal testing and computational modeling. None of this exists in biohacking. When biohackers edit human DNA, they risk inserting genetic material into the wrong location, potentially causing tumors and cancer. When they synthesize viruses at home without proper containment facilities, they risk creating biological hazards that could spread through communities. When they inject untested compounds directly into human bodies, they become their own data points with no ethical oversight. The consequences are paid in human suffering and sometimes in human lives. Yet the biohacking movement persists. Zaner still sells DI Respar kits, though he now directs people to experiment on frogs and bacteria rather than themselves. Other biohackers continue to modify their bodies with implants and experimental compounds. The fundamental tension that created this movement remains unresolved. Pharmaceutical companies charge astronomical prices for treatments. Government regulation moves slowly. Patients die waiting for cures that could have been available decades earlier. The story of Aaron Trawick represents the logical endpoint of this contradiction. A young man convinced he could move faster and better than established institutions. A movement that celebrated innovation over safety. A community that turned self-experimentation into entertainment for social media audiences. The tragedy was not inevitable, but it was predictable. The lesson is not that all biohacking is wrong. Individual experimentation on one's own body raises profound questions about bodily autonomy and personal freedom. But there is an enormous difference between cautious self-experimentation grounded in biological knowledge and theatrical performances designed to attract publicity. There is a difference between hoping to help suffering people and using those people's desperation as props in a personal crusade for recognition. The biohacking movement will continue to evolve. New technologies will emerge. New personalities will push boundaries. But perhaps future biohackers might remember Aaron Trawick and ask themselves whether their experiments serve genuine science or feed personal ambition. Whether they protect human welfare or sacrifice it for attention. Whether they democratize medicine or endanger vulnerable people who have nowhere else to turn. These questions matter. They matter even more now than when they were asked too late.